You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics, public policy, and political economy this evening because we take you to a very special event. We take you to Wilmette on Chicago's North Shore on June 15, 2009, a pleasant gathering of 60 or so at the home of Kathy Dodd and her husband, hosting Kathy's brother, Steve Moore, contributing correspondent for the Fox News Channel, Wall Street Journal editorial page writer, Art Laffer, former Reagan economics advisor and inventor of the Laffer curve. Very nice of Kathy and her husband to host Laffer and Moore at this event, especially because we understand Kathy Dodd is a big-time Barack Obama supporter. Laffer and Moore and Peter Tanis wrote The End of Prosperity, How Higher Taxes Will Doom the Economy If We Let It Happen. It's a good read. You'll want to take a good look at this book and go through it. You'll learn quite a bit. Whether you're somebody who supports Barack Obama or doesn't, it really doesn't matter. You'll want to take a good look at The End of Prosperity. The book was completed just prior to the election of President Barack Obama. So tonight's discussion is kind of an update and a summary of key points. But although the last words were probably written just in the fall of 2008 before the election, I think the authors could see where the things were going with the bailout and so forth. But tonight you'll get more on that because a greater understanding of what actually happened before Barack Obama was elected, and then an update, what's happened in the first 4 or 5 months of the Obama presidency, and what do the authors, Laffer and Moore, think about that. What does free market economics have to say about Obama's nationalization of the automobile sector, the mortgage industry, the insurance industry, the banking industry, the healthcare sector of the economy in the United States? What are the consequences of reversing the long-term trends in the United States, as Laffer and Moore and Tanis would see it? Lower taxes, less spending, less regulation, freer trade, sound currency. Those are the long-term trends as Laffer and Moore see it for the last probably 3 decades, with the exception of maybe the last few years of the Bush presidency. What's the Laffer curve? That's really key to understanding what Art Laffer and Moore and Peter Tanis are speaking about. Well, the main thing, it posits as you have higher tax rates, you ultimately get less tax revenue, less output, less investment, less savings. And the really surprising thing to some people is that higher tax rates will mean less tax revenue. Saying if you raise the rate, why do you get less revenue? Well, you get the supply side effect, the incentive effect kicking in, and it swamps the higher tax rate. People work less, save less, invest less, get less tax revenue. And the converse, of course, as you lower tax rates, you may get increased tax revenue. You will get increased output, savings, investment, so forth. That's the whole supply side philosophy. So you will see Steve Moore talk and introduce Art Laffer, who answers questions, including one from your host, as to how can economist Art Laffer and Austin Goolsbee, who's on the Council of Economic Advisors and has been a long-time advisor to Barack Obama on economics, how do they see the world so differently? Or do they? Because Laffer and Goolsbee both taught economics at the University of Chicago. Laffer in the early to mid-70s. Goolsbee, of course, in the 7 or 8 years preceding the Barack Obama presidency. They both taught in the business school. They taught economics. How is it they come to such different conclusions, or do they? You'll see Art Laffer take a crack at answering that question. And your host questioned Steve Moore, whether Bush and his Treasury Secretary Paulson and Fed Chief Ben Bernanke, who was appointed by Bush, are they really, should they get a lot of the blame for the Obama policies? Did they really start the ball rolling on nationalization and bailouts and so forth? So what do Laffer and Moore think about that? I think you're going to like the show. Stay with it. Okay, Jay, let's roll that tape.
We wrote this book, The End of Prosperity, because we were concerned that all of the kind of policy variables were turned in the wrong direction. And this began under Bush. We wrote the book a year before the stock market crashed. And so, we were concerned on trade, on budget, on tax, all of these things had been in such a bullish direction for the last 20 years. We're now moving in radically the wrong direction. But I do think that things are going to turn around. I'm a Reagan optimist, and I think they are for a couple of reasons. One is, I think the most important thing that's happened politically in since the beginning of the year is what happened in Europe with the elections. And I don't know how many, it should have been front page story across, you know, in every paper in America. I mean, all of the groups on the left and all of the left-wing parties of Europe got creamed in the elections. It was a massive repudiation by voters of the big labor, big green movement that has, you know, taken hold here in the United States. And the way I put this is that, you know, just as Thatcher was the precursor to Reagan, I think that that kind of, Europe is 2 or 3 years ahead of us in terms of, you know, experimenting with a lot of these dingbat ideas that we're promoting. So I think we're going to see a repudiation of that. And the other reason I think so is because I really believe that the GM bailout was the tipping point. I mean, I don't think, if anybody thinks it was a good idea, you're probably in the wrong room right now. You know, and I've been giving talks all over the country. I've never talked to one person, and I don't just talk to conservative groups, who thinks that the GM bailout was the right thing to do. And most Americans, I mean, my God, we now have GM and Chrysler being run by the United Auto Workers, the Canadian government, and the U.S. government. It's like the Three Stooges running the government. And so I think that this is going to be an albatross around the neck of the Obama administration. There is no exit strategy here. And I think that you see this in the polls, that for the first time, although President Obama is still very popular, you have a lot of people, even my sister Kathy, you know, the wisdom of some of the things that we do. And so I am going to stop there, and I'm going to turn it over to the guru, the man who really taught so many of us economics and was Ronald Reagan's chief economist, and you know, just a great friend. And Arthur, was really a great experience writing this book with you. So thanks for being here.
This is our third book together, by the way.
That's right.
Oh, wow. We did the two state books together. That was just the two of us. And we did this one, but it's, I think Steve's completely right. You know, these things go in swings. What I'd like to, I've been to this barbecue a couple of times before. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, it took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And, you know, if that's the case, we're going to have God following Obama.
Does that mean you're running for president?
But it is a very exciting time. Don't ever miss the enjoyment of all of it. You know, for me, it's just really fun. Enjoyment. You know, in this world, it takes short to give meaning to the word tall. It takes fat to give meaning to the word skinny, if you know what I mean. You know, to have the concept of good, you have to have evil. And who would God ever have been had it not been for the devil? So always remember, the world is always point, counterpoint, thesis, antithesis. I mean, who would Sherlock Holmes ever have been without the evil genius of Professor Moriarty? And I just want you all to know that I owe Barack Obama an enormous debt of gratitude. It gives us a chance for a second life and a second breath.
Both Arthur and I have met Barack Obama.
Oh,
You've never met him?
I never met him.
I've been in a couple meetings with him. I mean, the guy is incredible. I mean, in my lifetime, there have been 3 politicians who've just lit up a room. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. And those 3 are just heads and shoulders above any others that I've met. And so Barack Obama, as you've said many times, he's got a wonderful family. He's an incredible story. And it's a tragedy that he has so many of the wrong ideas, because it really is, because if he had the right ideas, just think of what he could do for this country.
I don't know if any of you were aware of Ronald Reagan's record when he was governor of California.
No.
Ronald Reagan, under his own personal legislation, raised the highest marginal personal income tax rate from 9.3 to 11.2%. His bill, not forced to by lefties or anything, he raised the highest capital gains tax from 9.3 to 11.2%. He raised the corporate tax rate, again, his legislation, from 9.3 to 11.2%. He chaired the Equal Rights Amendment in the state of California. He chaired it. He passed under, again, his own legislation, He removed all the anti-abortion statutes in the state of California. He was known as the pro-choice governor. Ronald Reagan also put in, that's my phone, by the way. Butch?
Is that Nancy?
Where are you?
I'll give it to him.
Thanks. And he put in the first criminal furlough program in California history, in U.S. history. Who would have ever guessed that that man would be the greatest president ever? You know, don't prejudge people. I used to tease the president on this, you know, and he said, well, you know, Art, I wasn't a very good governor, now was I?
Exactly what he would say.
And I said, sir, those are your words, not mine. He said, I know, but I'm better than those other ones. At least when I make a mistake, I change my mind. But the truth of the matter is, he wasn't a great governor. You never know where they come from. You never how they come out. So don't knock anyone off the list.
Who's the next governor of California?
By the way, there's great news.
It's going to be Jerry Brown, and he's the best governor you've ever seen.
Jerry
Well, let me tell you, Jerry
Was he
Brown,
90 years old by now? Jerry
he's
Brown?
a class ahead of me at Yale.
Like I said, 90 years
What is that read between the lines?
But Jerry Brown, as governor of California, was the best governor that ever existed. Without him, Prop 13 never would have passed. I mean, he got rid of the inheritance tax. He indexed the personal income tax. He's the guy who is the first presidential candidate, serious presidential candidate, who literally ran on getting rid of the progressive income tax in the United States. Can you believe that? That's Jerry Brown. The 13% flat tax, that I've worked with him forever on that stuff. I mean, he's just phenomenal. If he's the governor of California, you're going to see a flat tax in California, and you're going to see that state come back big time. They're the four grand kingdoms. I mean, let me tell you what the ideal policies are in fiscal policy. The first grand kingdom. You want spending restraint and low flat rate taxes. The further you deviate from that, the worse the system will be. Money. You need sound money. You need to guarantee the value of the currency so that a dollar bill 30 years from now, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now will be worth what it is today, and so we can all contract with each other in that. On trade, you need the minimum amount of the impediments to the free flow of goods and services and people across national boundaries. I mean, literally no barriers to open. And lastly, on incomes policies, we all know we need regulations. We know that. I mean, you can't wake up in the morning and decide which side of the street you're going to drive on. You know, we have to have rules. But what you want to do is make sure those rules don't go beyond the specific purpose and do additional collateral damage to the overall economy. That's what you really need. It's simple. It's simple, but that's one, I guess, Professor
Well, the
Watt.
other thing is we need to do is, you know, we've got two big fights, I think, in the next 6 months, 6 months to a year. You know, one is we've got to stop socialism of healthcare. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, we're talking about 15% of the economy. It's not just bad for our wallets, it is seriously jeopardizes the quality of our health. And so that's the fight, that's a huge fight right now. And I do think, you know, that can be turned around. I really do. I think that the American people don't, even though they see all the dysfunctions in our healthcare system, I think they realize turning it over to the government and turning it to like a postal service system isn't what they want with healthcare. And the other one is this, you know, insane, what I call cap and kill on the economy, which is, you know, the global warming fanaticism. And this is, you know, when you do this, if you put this cap and trade tax on, which is like a 12% energy tax, I mean, we're not going to have any manufacturing left in the country. I mean, we're just not. It's all going to go to China. It's going to go to Indonesia. It's going to go to other countries. We got to defeat those two things in the short term. And in the long term, I mean, Arthur made me a fanatic about the flat tax. I mean, I really think you want to see this economy, you want to see rocket fuel in this economy, do the Steve Forbes, Arthur Laffer flat tax. I mean, you get that rate down to 17, what's yours?
I just did the Jerry Brown one was my baby, which you can get down to 11%. Flat tax on business net sales, value added, and personal unadjusted gross income, and you can replace all federal income, all federal taxes, every one of them, payroll, all of them.
One of the things that comes through in your book very powerfully is that the rest of the world over the last 20, 30 years has followed your advice, has reduced rates and things like that. Do you think that that will make it happen in the United States faster because we need to compete?
Yeah.
Good.
No, I mean, we live in a global community, not that we haven't always lived in a global community. And, you know, it's not real rocket science, but if you have two locations, A and B, if you raise taxes in B and lower them in A, producers and manufacturers are going to move from.
A to B.
I have the hardest time with this at Harvard. The train's going to derail. I mean, you've had how many industries nationalized in the last 120 days? The auto industry, the banking industry, the insurance industry, the mortgage industry,
supplier industry,
healthcare industry.
Healthcare industry. You've got all those. You know, I can remember down in Chile back in the beginning of Allende, they had a law that any company on strike 5 weeks or more is automatically nationalized. What happened the day that bill passed and was signed into law? Every company in Chile went on strike. 5 weeks later, they were all nationalized. The government couldn't handle it, and you know what happened there. I mean, you know, these guys, they don't understand how to run things. I mean, they really don't. And they don't get it, and they have no doubts as to their own accuracy. I mean, they've never been held accountable for their own actions, literally. They've never had a bad trade. They've never lost a wife. They've never been humbled. And so what you're going to see happening is they're way overreaching. My hope is sort of I'm different than Steve in this one. I don't hope it, but I'm not really working real hard to stop cap and trade. I'm not working real hard to stop national health. I'm not working real hard to stop them from bailing out California. The sooner they do that, the quicker we get back to a real one. I can undo all of the stuff they've done in one good weekend. We all want to see the poor do well. But you don't make the poor rich by making the rich poor. The dream in America has never been to make Beverly Hills look like Watts. The dream has been to make Watts look like Beverly Hills. Poverty is disgusting, and wealth is wonderful. The dream is to make the poor wealthy, not to make the wealthy poor, and it really is. Kennedy put it so perfectly when he said that the best form of welfare is still a good, high-paying job. And the first key to all of the redistribution is to create a political economy of growth.
Or is it just an empirical difference between you and, say, Austin Goolsbee, one of the advisors to Barack Obama from the University of Chicago, and that they would say you overestimate these empirical effects? Yes, as you tax people more, they'll work a little less. They would say, but you'll spread it around, you'll do something good, and they won't cut back on their work as much as you think to work, save, and invest. Is that the difference in empirical?
I don't think so. You know, I don't know where Austin comes. Let me not name specific names, but let me just say that it is way cool being in the White House. It is cool beyond belief. And I mean, my office overlooked the front lawn. I was right next to the vice president's office. Let me tell you that these people love those jobs. They're the best jobs they'll ever have. And the thing here is that when Obama says X, his advisors don't say, you know, sir, X is probably not the right way to go. You don't keep your job very long if you do that. Your job is how to figure out how X makes perfect sense and how you can defend it. These people do rebut arguments they know to be true in order to curry favors with their political benefactors. It's true. Let me tell you, on my thing, I lied through my teeth every day of the week and twice on Sunday to hang with Reagan and Thatcher. But they never asked me to. And the point of it here is that when you ask about Austin Goolsbee, I feel very sorry for him. I was on the Fox show right after he had to defend Obama's firing of Wagner. Now, can you imagine how an economics professor from the University of Chicago would justify the president actually firing the president of General Motors? I mean, it's indefensible. And so my thing with Cavuto was very simply, I know Austin Goolsbee. He's a great, great guy. I said, I'm glad you said that, Art. I think he is too. And I said, I feel so sorry for him. You know, I can remember the days when Nixon would do all those things, and oh God, I hated defending them. You know, and just sort of trashing them a little bit. If something is truly urgent, put it off until tomorrow. It won't be then. And these people are in a panic decision mode. And I've been there in the Nixon White House in the 1970s when I watched them all do the same thing. And there's nothing but a train wreck coming. And it's coming. It's coming seriously. But don't worry about Obama's third term. The only one who's really good in this thing is Barack Obama, who's a very exceptional person. He's amazing. Harvard Law Review. I mean, you don't get that by affirmative action, let me tell you. If you look at his performance at Columbia or Occidental College, I mean, and then leaving there, he came and taught at the University of Chicago, where I taught most of my life, and I can tell you that only the very best and the very brightest. But you know, this guy is amazing. If you look at his family, I mean, this guy is not playing around with his wife like Clinton was. This guy's, you know, if you look at Michelle Obama, she's not only gorgeous, she's a real professional in her own right. I mean, really a super person. Those kids are great. I mean, if you want to know what a family life is in the south side of Chicago, that's not the Obama family. I mean, these people are the Nelsons on steroids. I mean, this is a phenomenal, it's not personal people. It's professional, it's business. How do you get prosperity? You don't get it by great speeches. You don't get it by saying change you can believe in, although that's not a bad line. You get it by doing the right things. If you tax people who work, and you pay people who don't work, do I need to tell you the next time? If you tax rich people and give the money to poor people, you're going to have shitloads of poor people and no rich people. The dream has always been to balance up, not to balance down. Rich people are cool and poor people are vulgar. You want to make the poor people into rich people, not the other way around. Balance up, not down, and they're balancing down. When I look at this world in a very serious sense, and I'm not joking now, and you see a little 5-year-old girl in Appalachia or in inner city Southside Chicago who lives with drug-addicted parents who've been separated, who are always on some thing, whatever it is, and she has no clothes, no money, her living conditions are awful. I mean, it's just a terrible existence. And then you look at someone else in Lake Forest who has the same age little girl. It's just a wonderful life. You ask yourself, how's that fair? I mean, what makes sense about this? It doesn't. It is totally unjust. It's totally unfair. And when you look at this and you say, if I were the father of this country, this world, why should anyone do better than anyone else? I mean, really. If you just think of the normal human, I want each of my kids to be equally successful, if you understand me. And if I were father of the world or in complete control, and there were no supply-side economics, if there were no incentive effects, what I would honestly do is anyone who makes above the average income, I would tax them 100% of their excess. And anyone below the average income, I'd subsidize them up to the average income so that we all come out even. I see no reason personally from my moral system why any one person should do any better than any other person. I mean, really we don't. But the truth of the matter is there are supply side effects. There are incentive effects. And if you actually taxed everyone who made above the average income, 100% of the excess they made above the average income, and you subsidize everyone below the average income up to the average income, I will stipulate today, Counselor, all incomes would end up being the same, at zero. What I want all of you to understand is that's economics. You know, you could have your tooth fairy and wishful thinking all you want, but the most immoral act a government can ever perpetrate on its citizenry is to enact policies that have the effect of destroying the production base from whence all beneficence ultimately flows. Yes, there are people you need to lift up and you need to put in, but what I want you to understand is there are costs of doing that.
Hope you enjoyed that discussion with Art Laffer and Steve Moore. Will Obama's economic policies impoverish this country, or will they turn things around and make it better? If China and India and Europe become more free market and the United States becomes less, will the United States continue its decline, or will Barack Obama find and get and achieve the right match between free market and government intervention? Is it true what Laffer and Moore were saying, supply side is just economics and you have to believe it? Economics is just the study of incentives. Or are things a little different? What would Austin Goolsbee have to say about it? He's a longtime economic advisor. He's on the Council of Economic Advisors. Art Laffer said Goolsbee would just lie, just like Laffer would have lied for Ronald Reagan. As he said, to hang with Reagan and Thatcher, he'd lie through his teeth. That's what Laffer said. Would Goolsbee do the same? So we hope we can get Austin Goolsbee on and have him speak for himself on this show. Next week, our guest is going to be Alderman Toni Preckwinkle, who is running for Cook County Board President in the Democratic primary. Is she a supply-sider? We'll find out. Remember, the first modern presidential supply-sider was JFK, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Democrat in good standing last time we looked. Think about that, Barack Obama. And you come back next week for Public Affairs and come back every week for Public Affairs.